Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, anyways, man, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little segment that I found very, very interesting. Anyways, when it comes down to it, they're going to be talking about, and when I say they, I'm talking about Skip and Shannon Undisputed because we're going to be reviewing a segment from them. Now, I don't usually talk about NBA basketball nearly as much as I do some of the other sports like basketball, NFL football or the tennis tour when it comes down to it because I really like tennis. I love watching tennis. And then, of course, boxing is my main sport that I talk about alongside with MMA as well because I know a lot about the fight game. But basketball is a sport that I really love to watch as well. Really got into it within the past 10 years. And of course, there's been some all time great players. Of course, no matter what generation you watch, there's always going to be some all time great players. In my opinion, LeBron James, of course, would have to be ranked number one overall for the 2010s. And in second place, and some people may disagree with me here, I personally would rank Stephen Curry. And some people may ask me, well, why would you rank him number two? You have Kawhi Leonard, you have Kevin Durant. They won some finals MVPs. Well, you certainly, could debate them over Steph. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. But the reason why I have Stephen Curry a little bit over them is because personally, I think that he's more valuable than them. I can't necessarily say that Stephen Curry, that he can do more things with the basketball, I suppose, than a Kevin Durant. And I can't say that he's the defensive, front that Kawhi Leonard is overall for his position. But when it comes down to it, Stephen Curry, first of all, if we actually want to talk about his defense is nowhere near as bad as many people try to say that it is. That's why a lot of the times he ends up with a lot of steals throughout the season. He's actually very, very smart usually with those things. But when it comes down to it all in all, Stephen Curry, he won two MVPs. That's more than either Kevin Durant or overall Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard has no MVPs when it comes down to it, which, in my opinion, is not always a barometer of, who completely the greater player is. But on top of that, Stephen Curry, he was always, and this is my opinion, some would debate this, but in my opinion, he was always the most valuable player on his team. And there was no debate about that. So whenever Stephen Curry won a championship, and he has three NBA championships, he was always definitively, in my opinion, the most valuable player on his team. Well, some would debate that, of course, with Kevin Durant. But my point being is this, and of course, some would debate because of that's the system that they run, but I would kind of disagree because Kevin Durant and that Golden State Warriors system, they really run things overall trying to, get the most open shots. So that would tell me that both Kevin Durant or Stephen Curry, if Kevin Durant, if he really was as valuable as a Stephen Curry, or all in all, if he was someone overall that makes the, wheels on the bus go round and round, basically meaning that if he was the engine of a team when it comes down to it, then he would bring a team just the same amount of success as a Stephen Curry, and he just has not done that. Now, if Kevin Durant, if he wins one with the Brooklyn Nets, then I would say, okay, then I can put him over as Stephen Curry. But Stephen Curry, not only does he have more championships than Kevin Durant, but he led his team to two NBA Finals appearances and a finals win before Kevin Durant even got there. So that's why Stephen Curry, in my opinion, is slightly above Kawhi Leonard and slightly above Kevin Durant as well, even though some people, of course, would debate that. But it is what it is. Anyways, when it comes down to it, Stephen Curry, he had to kind of face his demons yesterday, and it didn't seem like it went very well because the Golden State Warriors, they were undefeated up to this point when it came down to it. They were facing the Utah Jazz. And, not the Utah Jazz, the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies, when it comes down to it, they were actually the team that was responsible for booting the Golden State Warriors out of the playoff bracket last year because whoever was going to win that final game, all in all, they were going to make the playoffs. And Stephen Curry, there's always been this narrative about him that, he's this big choker and all this other stuff. I never personally agreed with that, but what I will say is this, Stephen Curry, there has been moments in his career where he has froze up or where he certainly could have come up bigger, all in all, than what he did. So it is what it is. But we're going to talk about his career as a whole. We're going to talk about, is Stephen Curry a choke artist? Or all in all, is that narrative overplayed? Let's get into it. Let's see what Skip and Shannon overall have to say. And let's tune in.
Points in the fourth quarter and overtime, going for a combined 0 for 6. It's the third straight game the two-time MVP didn't score at all in the fourth quarter. So, Shannon, What's going on with Steph?
There's nothing wrong with Steph. I mean, we got to stop this notion that great players in today's game, if they go a quarter or if they go a half or if they go this, that there's something wrong with them. Because we're making it seem like their predecessors, any great player, Jordan, Magic, Bird, whomever you want to choose, never had it off fourth quarter, never had it off overtime. Steph Curry is the third leading scorer in the NBA, averaging 29 points a game. Steph Curry was a plus 15. They were minus 15 in the 12 minutes that Steph Curry sat. I thought Steve Kerr left him out too long, Skip, because when he exited in the third quarter, they had a 6-point lead. When he come back with a little over 4 minutes in the fourth quarter, they were tied. Tied up in the ball game. I just thought Steve Kerr left him out too long, and he got out of rhythm.
One could make that case. I don't necessarily think that it's that big of a deal that Stephen Curry had an off night against the Memphis Grizzlies, especially because this is regular season. And to be quite honest with you, Steph Curry has actually led the Golden State Warriors to a pretty good record so far when I don't think all in all that they were really expected to do this good. I mean, I guess they added Andre Iguodala back, but he's a little bit older. I'm not necessarily sure if he's the same, player that he used to be, even though I'm sure he's certainly a help. And Klay Thompson, of course, has not returned yet either. Steph Curry, with what he was able to do last season, still was pretty damn amazing because that crew that he had, I mean, they were pretty much a bucket of bums. It is what it is. I mean, it's no offense, but is Andrew Wiggins really an elite player? Is even Draymond Green at this point? Draymond Green is a decent player. He's always going to be a force on defense, but it's no offense against Draymond Green, but on offense, he makes some of the most boneheaded plays that I've personally ever seen in my life. Like, that was a big part of the reason, actually, why they got eliminated against the Memphis Grizzlies, because Draymond Green, for whatever reason, instead of trying to go for a dunk or at least trying to go for a layup, he thought that he had to shoot it about 5 feet out, 5 to 6 feet out overall and roll it in. When you know damn well that you don't have that offensive hardware. Like, I don't know what the hell he was trying to go for. It is what it is. Like, go ahead and take a look at Draymond Green in the Toronto Raptors finals. Unfortunately, Golden State, they were a little bit too injured in that series. Not only did they lose Kevin Durant, but they lost Klay Thompson. So pretty much after that, they basically had no chance. But when it came down to it all in all, Draymond Green was averaging like literally 5 turnovers per game, which isn't the worst that I've seen. I've seen someone like a Russell Westbrook average more, but when it comes down to it, Draymond is not as good as some people try to make him out to be. He's good, don't get me wrong. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. But Draymond, all in all, sometimes he has very bad brain freezes.
But Steph was they were plus 20 and Steph 41 minutes. That's where they lost the game, is that, and a lot of times that happens, Skip, when your best player goes off the court. Can you maintain the lead? Or where Golden State was really good, Skip, when they were winning championships, is that when their second unit came on the court, whatever the lead was, it was expanded. Or it was at least the same when they Steph and KD or and Klay and Draymond, when they would come back, either the lead had expanded or it was at least, at bare minimum, the same.
Yep.
Now they find themselves in a situation if Steph, Draymond, whomever leaves the court, the starters leave, they're going to come back and it's going to be a lot different ball game than what it is. But there's nothing wrong with Steph Curry. I'll take it. If you think something wrong with it, let me have it. Let me have it with the Lakers. I'll show you what's wrong with it. I'll show you.
Well, is he the all-time greatest shooter ever?
Yes, okay. Yes, yeah, but even Larry Bird missed shots. Michael Jordan missed shots. Yep.
Right, they did, Shannon. That's great. Even the greatest, for their sport. Even Novak Djokovic for tennis, who's one of the all-time great clutch artists in tennis. Even he's choked games away. He just did against Daniel Medvedev in the U.S. Open, performed horribly. All right, I've seen Michael Jordan, he give away games sometimes. Magic Johnson, of course, did it that one time against Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics, I believe, in their first matchup. All right, of course, and Larry Bird, he's missed shots, of course, as well. But when it comes down to it, Stephen Curry, when you talk about in terms of clutch ability, I'm not saying that he's horrible, but he's not on that top 10 level. It is what it is. Stephen Curry is a great player, and I think when people try to say that, oh, he's not clutch and he freezes every single time. No, a player all in all. You see, my team is the Chicago Bulls. That's my favorite team when it comes down to it. So they're the team that I watch. I seen DeMar DeRozan try to hit a mid-range shooter yesterday for the tie, and he literally shot an air ball. So DeMar DeRozan is a person overall that freezes up every single time. Stephen Curry is not a person that freezes up every single time. but he isn't a person overall that you can rely upon as much as, say, someone like a Michael Jordan or a Larry Bird or a Magic Johnson or someone like that. Because he can freeze up. He can have certain brain farts. He overall can have certain moments to where he just loses his ability. It is what it is.
He sure did.
Would you call Steph Curry the all-time greatest clutch shooter ever?
No, I would not.
You would not.
No.
I would not either.
Saw a stat yesterday that said Steph could miss his next 500 regular season three-point shots and still have a better percentage in the regular season
than Ray
Allen.
Yes.
Whew.
Yes.
Let me say this, because Skip Bayless, there's a reason why he doesn't like Stephen Curry. The reason why he doesn't like Stephen Curry is because he was hoping Stephen Curry was going to knock LeBron James off that pedestal of being the quote-unquote king in the NBA. And had he done that in the 2016 NBA Finals, Stephen Curry probably would be remembered as the greatest player of this era, at least debatably, and not LeBron James. So it is what it is. That's why Skip Bayless is always so pissed off at Stephen Curry. Because he looks at him and basically says, God damn it, if you would have done that, then I would have never had to heard these goddamn arguments compared to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And in my opinion, LeBron James is not in Michael Jordan's league. But when it comes down to it all in all, he is an all-time great player. Skip, let me say this. I do think Skip, all in all, sometimes he hates on LeBron James a little bit too much. What I will also say is this, though. He also does tell a certain amount of the truth on LeBron James. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, once again, when people try to say all in all that, Stephen Curry, that, his numbers go down in the playoffs, well, that's a little bit expected because Stephen Curry, he's 6'3", and on top of that, he's not some super-duper athlete. He's not a guy, all in all, that is even like an Allen Iverson, who was, 6 foot, and a guy, all in all, that, could easily dunk a basketball. Stephen Curry's not a guy like that. He's not someone overall that has jump out of the gym athleticism. Now, of course, he has great shooting ability. He has great ball handling. He has very decent speed. So he's not a bad athlete. But when it comes down to it all in all, Stephen Curry is a purely skilled player. I'm not saying that he doesn't rely a little bit on his athleticism, and he has great conditioning as well. That's why you see him running around the court, setting up picks overall when it comes down to setting up screens and a certain amount of other things. He is always running around the court, basically making people chase him around. He plays very well off the basketball. But when it comes down to it all in all, Stephen Curry, if you're trying to argue all in all that, his 3-point percentage, goes down a little bit in the playoffs, well, sure, it's going to go down. But when you take a look at Stephen Curry in the playoffs, his average for 3-pointers, it's still over 40% shooting. So, we can nitpick that and say, Stephen Curry, he clearly is a choker because all this are bullshit. That's a bunch of horseshit. Once again, there's only so much of a choke artist you can claim Steph Curry to be when the man has 3 NBA championships, and he clearly was the most valuable player on his team. So it is what it is.
For my money, postseason, game on the line, give me that guy who killed my Spurs with the greatest clutch shot I've ever seen in Game 6, obviously,
you would
2013.
think, Skip, as well as he shoots the ball.
I would agree with that. I would say Ray Allen was a better clutch shooter than Stephen Curry. But what I would also say is that Ray Allen did not have the same amount of pressure on himself as a Stephen Curry did. But it is what it is. But is Ray Allen greater than a Stephen Curry? No.
All from distance, you would think that he would be better in a clutch situation, that he would have so many more walk-offs and game winners than what he actually has.
That has been my only issue. And I'll call it a small issue with Steph Curry, but it continues to rear its ugly head. He's just not a great clutch shooter. I'm talking about last second game on.
Well, what I'll say is this. If you're talking about within the last 2 seconds to walk off and win the game, I would somewhat agree. At least he isn't now. Because he had a couple of great clutch shots, I believe, within his first 2 championship runs. But ever since then, he's been really, really off. I'm not saying that there hasn't been a couple of decent layups that I've seen here or, him, penetrate to the basket. By the way, also this, because a lot of people who don't know anything about basketball, and I'm not claiming to be some basketball guru, but a lot of people, they claim Stephen Curry to be this one-trick pony. No, Stephen Curry is not a one-trick pony. Does he shoot a lot? Does he shoot a lot of threes because he has that type of range and it can be utilized as a great weapon with him because he's so proficient from that? Yeah, sure. But Stephen Curry, all in all, has great ball handling skills. He can set up a certain amount of shots that he wants to at almost any given time, even against players that are decently bigger than him or certain players that may even be able to keep up, with the same speed as him. which isn't going to happen very often because Stephen Curry is extremely quick when it comes down to it. But Stephen Curry, when it comes down to it, all in all, he can do a multitude of things. He's a great penetrator to the basket. He has great overall 2-point, percentage, shooting when it comes down to it. He has great 3-point shooting. He has excellent ball handling ability. He's nowhere near as bad defensively as many people try to claim he is. Actually, he's not really a bad defender at all. I would say that he's actually possibly even an above average defender. I just wouldn't call him a great defender. But when it comes down to it, all in all, Stephen Curry, he can pretty much do a lot of things on the basketball court. You can't be a one-trick pony or one-dimensional and be an all-time great player. Like a Carmelo Anthony.
I'm going to change the night.
Right.
I'm going to wipe the slate clean with one stroke. And he had two...
I always find that interesting that everyone always criticizes Stephen Curry because he's allegedly this one-trick pony and all he can do is shoot. Well, what the hell does Carmelo Anthony do? All Carmelo Anthony has ever done throughout his career is just try to be a volume shooter. Like, that dude has literally been nothing else. Carmelo Anthony is clearly one of the most overrated players of all time. The man has brought very little success to certain playoff teams. That's why he's gotten eliminated so early, usually in the playoffs. Even with the New York Knicks, he didn't usually bring them a hell of a lot of playoff success.
Chances late last night, and I started watching this game, and I could not stop.
Right.
Mostly because of Ja Morant. We're going to talk about him in a few minutes.
Yeah, we are. You going to come around to my
Ja Morant is a very good player. He's very, very good.
side, I believe.
We'll see about that. But he is making an very early MVP case of his own.
He's definitely making an all-star case.
Is he? Because he scared the life out of your Lakers, and it came down to that third free throw that he missed, but then he went up to Golden State, and he validated what they did.
7-7. He was 7-7 from the free throw line.
And validated that they did win the play-in game at Golden State.
Right.
Last year, he did have Dylan Brooks, who's out so far.
Right.
But the point was, they did it again.
Right.
And they did it because Steph had chances late to make shots. He had 3 more chances in overtime to just change the game, wipe the slate clean, and he didn't do it.
No.
And it did not surprise me because the series that sticks in my craw, I can't get it out of my psyche, was
the 2016 NBA Finals, especially the last game. And that still is in Skip Bayless's nightmares because, once again, he was really hoping that Stephen Curry or someone would stop LeBron James at just having 2 NBA championships. It is what it is.
Your one big comeback, LeBron's big comeback in his second go-round in Cleveland happened in 2016 when they were down 3-1. You remember it all too well. And what happened in Game 7? Well, in the end, Kyrie happened. You could throw in LeBron had the greatest chase down block in the history of basketball. That all happened down the street.
And LeBron James, if we're going to be honest about him, he has a big problem sometimes with closing out games as well. Now, of course, he has, more clutch shots, I guess, in the fourth, if you want to say, than a Stephen Curry. But those are teams overall that usually are not going to be super duper competitive. I guess the Indiana Pacers, they were pretty decent. The Toronto Raptors, but like I said, their best player and their lead player, well, I won't say their best player, but their lead player was DeMar DeRozan, who I like to call DeMar DeFrozen. I watched this one channel overall called Chronicles of Judah 144. Some of you have probably heard of him. He likes to call Russell Westbrook Russell Westbrick, which I think is an appropriate name, and he likes to call James Harden James Hardhead. I think that's a great name. My nickname for DeMar DeRozan is DeMar DeFrozen because he freezes up every single goddamn time that there's a clutch game situation. I don't care if it's a last-minute shot or if it's a game within the last 5 minutes. DeMar DeRozan, he is never overall going to be a clutch player. He is never going to be, all in all, a championship-winning player as long as he's the best player on a championship team. He has to be pretty much the 4th best player on a championship team because DeMar DeRozan, although he's somewhat skilled, he's never going to be someone that leads a team to an NBA championship. Stephen Curry can at least lead a team to an NBA championship. Like Stephen Curry and DeMar DeRozan and some of these other guys that are claimed chokers, like they're not even in the same league.
stretch of Game 7. But what happened to the home team? This was at Oracle. This was Steph's team at home with no KD, obviously. And what did Steph do in Game 7? He shot 6 of 19. That was 32%. He shot 4 of 14 from 3. That's 29%. And if we then go microcosm, we go down.
To be fair, Stephen Curry was slightly injured in that finals. Yeah, I believe he had a bum knee or something like that. So maybe if you wanted to cut him a little bit of slack, but at the end of the day, you have to perform better in those finals.
To the fourth quarter of Game 7 at home. This is his house.
Right.
These are his fans. This is his game to win or lose to me. And in the fourth quarter, Steph Curry goes 1 of 6, 1 of 5 from 3, and doesn't get to the free throw line one time. He's at plus minus of -1. Had one huge turnover about the 3-minute mark. We just got careless and went behind the back and threw it into the third row. It was like a Russell Westbrook memorial.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? I don't.
I would agree with that. Russell Westbrook, he's got to be one of the worst decision makers that I've ever seen in the clutch. One of the worst decision makers that I've ever seen personally. Russell Westbrook, when you take a look at the amount of turnovers that he has, I mean, good Lord.
Don't know what you're thinking. So,
that's why I don't personally believe that the Lakers are going to win the NBA championship. I don't see how LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, and they play somewhat similarly. It's just LeBron James, he's much more intelligent, overall as an individual basketball player. But they both are somewhat of ball dominators when it comes down to it. So I don't really see how that's going to completely work out. And on top of that, Anthony Davis, he pretty much is made out of tissue paper. So we'll see overall how that works out. But of course they have a chance. They're very talented. So we'll see. I just don't think Russell Westbrook, I just don't think that he's ever going to win a championship. I don't see it.
Again, with the 3-1 lead in games.
At least, unless maybe he's a bench player. But it is what it is.
5, 6, and 7, 2 of them at home. Steph Curry in the fourth quarters of those games shot 6 of 20, 3 of 12 from 3. And would you believe he never got to the free throw line one time in any of those 3 fourth quarters as they lost Game 5, Game 6, and Game 7? It was just hard for me.
Well, let's also be real. The referees, they were putting some barbecue sauce on there. They ejected Stephen Curry in one of those games, I believe, and they were probably trying to help out LeBron James a little bit. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, you have to get over that. It's whatever. But let's also bring up some of Stephen Curry's clutch areas. He was able to defeat the OKC Thunder when they were down 3-1 to the OKC Thunder. That's a big part of the reason why I also cannot have Kevin Durant over Stephen Curry, in my opinion. Because when you were the best player on your team, and Stephen Curry was the best player on his team, you cannot defeat him. It is what it is. Stephen Curry was able to beat you, but it is what it is. When it comes down to it all in all, Stephen Curry, he was able to perform very well in those final games, even though I believe he was slightly injured. So he came back against that team. And then also, of course, when Kevin Durant was out, when it came down to it in that one 2019 run, I believe, people thought that the Houston Rockets were going to walk all over him. And Stephen Curry, he was very clutch in those final moments. He came up with some very, very clutch shots. They just weren't last-minute shots. All right, but he was very, very clutch in that Houston Rockets series. He also was he was very, very good in the Portland Trailblazers series. That was Damian Lillard's time to shine. And he absolutely got ran over like a goddamn overall armadillo in the road, ran over by a truck. He got absolutely ran over by Golden State, especially Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry was so phenomenal that series. And then, of course, they faced off with the Toronto Raptors. It was a 6-game series when it came down to it. But that's a little bit understandable, of course, because Stephen Curry, not only was he without Kevin Durant, but I think he was without Klay Thompson for Game 3, 4, and 5, and 6, I believe. So once Klay went out, he basically had no chance. Because who the hell else was going to put up points on the board? Was it going to be Draymond Bonehead Green? It wasn't going to be him.
To stomach, because then we came full circle back to Kawhi's Toronto, and obviously KD got hurt, and then Klay got hurt, and it was horrendous. But Steph had a chance to save the day.
Yeah.
A couple of late shots.
And he was hot earlier because that was the game he had 47, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, but he had a shot to win it, and he missed it. So as deep as we are into his career, as great as he is, and I will give you this, he's the greatest shooter I've ever seen. But he is not a great clutch shooter.
Yeah.
He is not.
That's true.
proven that.
Let's also not forget, though, that Stephen Curry also in the 2018 finals, where they ended up sweeping the Cavaliers, where Kevin Durant ended up getting the finals MVP. Besides Game 3, I thought Stephen Curry, you could argue, actually was more valuable in 3 out of the 4 games. In Game 1, Game 2, he was phenomenal. Game 4 as well, even though, of course, Cleveland basically gave up at that point, but it is what it is when it comes down to it. But all in all, Stephen Curry, a lot of people don't remember this. LeBron had an all-time great performance in that first game against the Golden State Warriors. Now, of course, he gave up in overtime because he was scoreless in overtime as well, and he was completely pouting. That's how you could tell that he knew that he was not going to win that series anyway. But when it comes down to it all in all, at least, if they did not win Game 1. But it is what it is. So LeBron James, he pretty much gave up. But Stephen Curry, actually, he was the one that got the final shot for Golden State. When it came down to it, that led them into overtime. He got a little layup overall, and he ended up tying the game, and also he had to get an N1. So he ended up getting them 3 extra points when they were down.
Maybe he's got enough basketball left that he'll show us. Maybe he'll have more opportunities. Surely he's going to cash one at some point. But it did not surprise me last night that he went from 36 points through 3 quarters to no points.
36 through the entire game.
Yeah, 36. He wound up with 36. So you go fourth quarter. Now, I'm with you. I don't know why Steve rested. Maybe he said I'm a little gassed. I don't know.
And maybe Skip it because it's early.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to you're not trying to tax him this early in the season because, he played 41 minutes and 41 minutes.
Yep.
That's a lot of minutes 5 games into the season. Because Steph normally plays around 35, 36 minutes. Occasionally they like to play him even less than that and they were really good. But Steve Kerr's probably thinking, it's a game, hey, let me get him some rest. He'll come in fresh. But I never thought he got his rhythm back. Once he rested that long, Skip, he didn't seem to have the same rhythm.
Stephen Curry also is a rhythm player, meaning that you can take him out of the game at least a little bit. You're never going to take him out 100% because Stephen Curry, once again, I don't care what anybody says. Stephen Curry is one of the greatest 20 NBA players that I've personally ever seen. All right, he's up there. It is what it is. Stephen Curry is up there. All right, it is what it is. And when you talk about that top 20 to top 30 range, those are all-time great players. Those are more than likely players that have led their teams to championships, or at least players all in all that can lead them to an appearance. So those players, when it comes down to it, especially Steph, who's a 3-time NBA champion, you're not going to ever be able to stop him 100%, but you can slightly take him out, all in all, because once again, he's not someone that is super duper. First of all, he's not super duper tough. He can be somewhat injured. Secondly, when it comes down to it all in all, Stephen Curry, I guess I shouldn't say not tough, but, he can be injured. He can overall be, what the hell? I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but he can be somewhat taken out of a game that way if you get a little bit physical with him. And on top of that, Stephen Curry, he is mainly a rhythm player. So if you're able to get him off of his rhythm and maybe make him lose confidence, he can be slightly taken out of a game. Never 100%, but he can be slightly taken out of a game.
That he had before he left that game.
Okay, so to your dismissive point, I'll take him. Well, sure you'd take him. Who wouldn't take him? I got that. But would you take him over Ray Allen in the postseason? I would not.
But I think the thing...
Yes, I would. Now, of course, when you talk about last minute clutch shot, then no, of course, if you're talking about that. But all in all, you have to take Stephen Curry over Ray Allen. I'm sorry, but Ray Allen was never on the level of a Stephen Curry. He was a great player. I know, in his early days, I believe when he played for the Bucks and, maybe even a couple of other teams, Ray Allen was a beast, don't get me wrong. But he was not on the level of a Stephen Curry.
Skip, is that it's different now.
In terms of clutch shooter, is he ahead of Stephen Curry? Absolutely.
Shots that the three was a lot more contested than it is now. There's a lot more space. That's why it's just so hard to compare eras. Because the era that we're in now with all the space, it's kind of like football, Skip. And when we're going to look back in 20 years and we're going to look at these numbers and we're going to say, really? Because it's going to be commonplace. You're going to have 5 guys throw for 5,000 yards in a season. Somebody's going to throw.
That's very possible. Because, like I said, the quarterback is very, very protected today. So it is what it is. And they throw the ball a hell of a lot more than they used to. That's why I say, people, they always take a look at Joe Montana and they love to say, oh, well, Joe wasn't really that, big as shit because Joe Montana, he never had a 4,000 passing yard season. he was on a team and he was also in an era where usually you would run the football just as much as you passed it. Like Brett Favre, he was one of the first ones overall, I believe, the first one to like reach, I believe, 70,000 yards. Like, take a look at his attempts compared to like a Joe Montana. It is what it is.
6,000 yards here before long, Skip. It might happen this year. I say within the next 5 years, there will be somebody throw for 6,000 yards.
Well, obviously we got an extra game.
You're right.
But even so, I got
And with the rules,
Yep.
and so we're going to have a receiver. You're going to have a bunch of receivers getting 120, 130. Michael Thomas, that we like, man, 150-something catches. Somebody's going to probably go get 160, 175. And somebody's going to have 2,000 yards receiving.
I agree. That's also like why what Jerry Rice did back in the day with him accumulating that amount of passing yards and him having so many records, and I believe also him having an MVP. It's going to be very hard, and three championships. But of course, I'm not going to say that Jerry Rice, of course, did not have a big part in that. But of course, usually the most valuable position in football, of course, is the quarterback. That's why, when I see other positions, maybe like a wide receiver or a tight end that maybe did not have that great of playoff success, unless I've seen them repeatedly maybe not perform that well, like Odell Beckham did, with the New York Giants, then I may cut them a little bit of slack because they don't have anywhere near the amount of control as a quarterback does. So it is what it is.
And so
That's why Tony Gonzalez on many people's lists can be looked at as the greatest of all time for his position. Would I argue him as that? I think that you can argue him as that. I think you can argue Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, Shannon Sharp, one of those guys. If I'm missing anyone, then someone let me know.
It would be so hard, and that's why it's so hard to compare eras, because it was so different than when Ray first got in shooting the threes, as opposed to what it is now. Look at Buddy Hield has the most threes on 1,000 attempts. And Buddy Hield is not the shooter that Steph Curry is. But it's a totally different game shooting the three from when Steph came in to what it is now. And I don't know telling what it's going to be, Skip, another 5 to 10 years from now. But I'll take Steph. Nothing wrong with Steph. I'll tell you what, y'all leave him open, man, and see.
Okay. Well, what sells? Touchdown passes and three-point shots. Okay?
Exactly.
Bingo.
And that's the guy you want to see him shoot him. The dunk is the dunk, Skip. But don't nothing get the crowd going like a three-pointer. Because that's what happened with 20-point leads now. Guys hit a couple of threes, and what was now all of a sudden it's like, damn, how did they get back in it on 4 possessions?
See Russell Westbrook.
There you go, man. I'm trying to forget that.
By tonight, you'll be able to forget it.
Yeah, because old Gold will be back running to be in that orchestra.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And Russ will have his earbuds in, right?
I'm going to be very excited to see what Golden State possibly can do this year. Stephen Curry, when it comes down to it, man, like I said, in my opinion, he's a top 20 player of all time. Because I can't put him in that top 10 range. Not only do I think that, of course he has 3 NBA championships, but you may need to get a finals MVP. And on top of that, you also may need to get another MVP, in my opinion, for you to be in the top 10. I'm not one of these guys that says, for Stephen Curry to surpass all these guys, he has to get 3 more NBA championships and all that other stuff. Like, if Stephen Curry wins 1 more NBA championship, maybe 2, I could certainly see him in my top 10 of all time. But he is probably going to have to win at least 1 finals MVP. If he doesn't win another regular season MVP. It is what it is. Because then, if Stephen Curry, if he wins another MVP, and if he wins a finals MVP, and if he wins a 4th NBA championship, and he's certainly the best player on his team, and he doesn't have someone like a Kevin Durant on his team or anything like that, then all of a sudden we have to look at him also a little bit differently. All right? Then all of a sudden, he probably would be in my top 10 of all time. Then I probably would have to put him over someone like a Kobe Bryant or an Akeem Olajuwon. Now, of course, some people, they would say, well, why would you put him over a Kobe Bryant? Because Stephen Curry, every time he won an NBA championship, he was probably the most valuable player on that team every single time. Kobe Bryant, he was the most valuable player, of course, in those last 2 NBA championships, but the first 3 were clearly Shaquille O'Neal. It is what it is. And I'm not even just saying that because of the finals MVPs. But when you take a look at the numbers, and also how Kobe struggled to get back to championship caliber once Shaquille O'Neal left, it's very clear, in my opinion, who the greater player is between those two. So it is what it is. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, we'll see.
All right, let's head back to the NFL and a game to watch this weekend. Will Jameis Winston get revenge on Tom Brady and his former team?
He might.
That's next.
Anyways, that's really about it for this segment. We'll see overall what Mr. Stephen Curry does. I think all in all that is going to be very interesting. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. We'll see what happens.